From WHYY and Billy Penn, it is Hittin season. Hey there, podcast pals. I'm John Stolnis from The Good Phight and Billy Penn. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at John Stolnis. Coming up, big weekend series victory for the Phils. They took down the evil Empire this weekend. Take 2 out of 3 from the Los Angeles Dodgers. And we're going to talk about what we learned from this weekend's series against the Dodgers as the Phillies win their 3rd straight series to open the season. We'll break down what happened in Sunday's dramatic come-from-behind victory. Lots to talk about from Sunday, and also get into Saturday and Friday's game. We'll recap the whole weekend and take a look ahead to this week's big series against the struggling Atlanta Braves. So lots to get to here on this edition of the podcast. Justin Klugh from Baseball Prospectus. Also continued success and the dirty inning. No, that's not right. Yeah, continued success. No, we're not doing that anymore. We don't do continued success anymore. The Dirty Inning and Absolutely Hammered are the 2 shows that are over on our Hittin Season Patreon right now. Where did that come from? We haven't done continued success in like 2 years.
Yeah, that was an update for me to learn that show was back. Yeah, I would say that in Todd Zalecki's write-up about this game, he talked about how, or in Game 3 of this Phillies-Dodgers series, he talked about how even if the Phillies had lost, they still would have felt they were a good team. They still would have felt like they were in good shape. And that's the kind of like default kind of hands in the air end of every game this early in the season. And the phrase playoff-like atmosphere is thrown around an awful lot these days. But I will say that I had my first pangs of reliever hatred.
Yes.
Of the baseball season, and that's how I knew I was back. And that's also, I feel, pretty early in the season to be feeling that. So playoff-like atmosphere, yeah, I really wanted to win these games, and frankly, the Phillies, they made a couple of statements throughout this series, but I think the ultimate statement is the Dodgers are beatable, and we can beat them. Yeah,
well, we're going to go through and talk about our main takeaway, one thing we learned after watching this series here in just a second, but I think your overall take there is a good one. And I agree with you. This was the first series where I felt like there were some stakes involved, like where when they went up 6-2 after the Castellanos home run and then gave it all back. It's the first time this year I've gotten legitimately angry at anything. Like I was like, no. Jordan Romano, no. We're not doing this. We're not losing this game. And, to their credit, they did come back and win the game on Sunday by the score of 8-7. And so we're going to get into each of these games individually coming up here in just a second. But I think you were hinting at some of the broader themes of this series against the Dodgers, who everyone acknowledges has the best roster in baseball. They had another off season to remember, where they go out and they get Roki Sasaki and they re-sign Teoscar Hernandez, and they have a super team. That's what it's pretty much get Blake Snell this off season too. You have all these different pieces in place. But the Phillies did a lot of great things in this series too, and they showed that they are a good team as well. Justin, before I get to my big thing that I learned after watching this series, tell me yours. What is one thing that you think we all learned after watching the Phillies take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers?
One thing.
I mean, there are many.
Well,
there are many, to be sure.
For sure, there are many. Yes, I'm just struggling to narrow it. We'll get to them all, I guess. But I'll just start with one, and that is, I think, kind of the main one that'll be the biggest takeaway from especially Game 3 was that the Phillies can be patient. It doesn't necessarily mean anything for the future, but we saw in Game 3 that they were capable of watching a pitcher beat himself. In fact, that's what I believe Castellanos said. That's what they had decided to do. When it started raining, I don't think I've ever seen a pitcher visibly react to discomfort in the rain more than Tyler Glasnow did.
He melted down. It was unbelievable. It's like he had never seen rain before.
It was, and it almost felt like it took that strong of a visible reaction for the Phillies to be like, now, hey, wait a second. If he's that rattled, then he's probably not going to pitch very well. Yeah. And in fact, the wetness out there may be impacting the general direction of the baseball. And that would be to our benefit to not go up there. Hang on, I'm talking. That would be to our benefit to not go up there and just start swinging. Interesting. All right, let's take this into consideration. And what do you know? They wound up with 11 walks on the day, 18 total for the entire series. Kyle Schwarber had 4 walks in this series. Not surprising for him to be leading the charge there, but he had actually not been racking up the walks so far this year. And then after him, you had Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Max Kepler and Rafael Marchand all had 3 walks in this series. Marchand's all came in game 3, the one he started. That's just, it's a positive sign because the Phillies have this lineup full of boppers. We've talked before about how they're not all firing on all cylinders. They're not all playing at their ceilings all the time. But if you can, see that a pitcher is rattled and use that to get yourself on base or let him get you on base, then somebody on that lineup, the one who's going to be the hitter that day, is going to be able to start causing trouble by putting the ball in play. And what do you know? First pitch back from commercial, Nick Castellanos is cracking the universe in half with a home run to Fishtown. So, yeah, that was a really, really comforting thing to see that at the very least, even if they never do it again, the thing that really started off the Phillies off season was, we got to fix this problem that they're not disciplined. They showed today they can notice when a pitcher is going to lose control and do the offense for them, and they let him do that. And that was a big, big, big reason why they won today.
I really hope they learn from that, that they take that and they move it forward. You can't be afraid to hit with 2 strikes. And I think a lot of Phillies hitters, they are fearful of falling behind in the count. Listen, the numbers are what they are. When you're behind in the count, you're less likely to get a hit, and especially in this day and age with pitchers and the stuff that they have. But if you've got a pitcher who is struggling with their command, you have got to let that guy make him throw you strikes. And then, like Castellanos did, after Glasnow melted down, much like Burt Hooton in the 1977 Black Friday game, which I know most people listening don't know that.
I was just thinking that.
But I was one, just FYI. So I don't remember that game, but I've seen video. That dude just melted down, and the Phillies let him do it. And that's the same thing that happened to Glasnow in this game. And you're right, Castellanos said that after the game. It's like he just looked like he couldn't throw a wet ball or deal with the wet mud, and so they let him paint themselves into a corner. And then I'll give Castellanos credit. I mean, it's a new pitcher, so the wildness was not likely to continue right away, and so he ambushed the dude for the grand slam that put the Phillies up 6-2 in the third. So I hope they learn from that. Like if you can't have that approach every game where you're just taking strike 1, strike 2. But if you do see a pitcher who is struggling with their command, or if you do get into a hitter's count, don't chase out of the strike zone in order to seek fame and glory, just like they were saying, pass the baton on to the next guy. And it's easier said than done for sure, but it directly led to the Phillies' best offensive output in this series that they had. They only scored 3 runs in each of the first 2 games. 3 in the first game, 1 in the second game, and then they had a much bigger game, scoring 8 runs in the game on Sunday. So.
Well, I was just going to say that, I mean, if anybody in that lineup is going to come up in a situation where, hey, this guy's, really struggling to find the zone and, you might want to be a little more disciplined in your approach, for Castellanos to come up is like, he's probably going to break that chain no matter what everyone else has been doing. No matter that he's the one that said later, we noticed that. Because again, first pitch swinging, he's like, well, obviously I'm going to swing.
That doesn't apply to me,
That doesn't apply to me. The voice in my head said, why not? So I went up there and cranked one, and what do you know? Totally worked out. So that totally, absolutely can work. I also wanted to mention something else we noticed from this game, just to go back to game 1. But a general, this does kind of like impact the rest of the series. But JT Real Muto, man, I mean, we spent the last part of our preview episode talking about how we're worried about JT Real Muto, and he essentially won that first game all by himself by doing something that not many catchers in baseball are going to be able to do. And that bleeds into something else that you noticed from this whole series, was that the Phillies really seem to know how to keep Shohei Ohtani oppressed, which you might not have guessed going into this. But hey, a team with a good pitching staff is probably more able to do that. And the Phillies attacked Shohei Ohtani with exactly what they needed to get him out. Honestly, Mookie Betts wasn't much of a factor in this series. It was way more the Teoscar Hernandez and Tommy Edman show.
Right. No, there's lots to get to in these games, and we're going to kind of dive into those guys a little bit more. I will give you my big thing that I learned after watching the Phillies take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, and it's something I think that they learned last year themselves, and it was just reaffirmed this weekend in Philadelphia. But that as good as the Dodgers are, and maybe as superior as their roster is, the Phillies are on the same level as the Dodgers are. And specifically, these Phillies match up really, really well with the Dodgers. For whatever the reason, whether it's in Philadelphia, but especially in Philadelphia, the Dodgers have a hard time playing in Philadelphia, and last year the Phillies did pretty well playing in Los Angeles. The Phillies have beaten them in 8 out of the last 10 meetings. They've won 6 out of the last 7 at Citizens Bank Park, and they've outscored them 38-20 at home over that span. It's a plus 18 run differential over the last 10 games at Citizens Bank Park against the Dodgers. So the Phillies feel comfortable against playing against this team because I think they know they have the arms to match up with the Dodgers. They have the starters to stifle LA's bats. It sure helped Freddie Freeman wasn't playing in this series. Him hitting the injured list right before the series began makes things a whole lot easier. But as you mentioned, they really do seem to have, at least so far, figured out how to shut down Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani was, 1 for 11 in this series with 5 strikeouts and 2 walks. And that's nothing new. He's continued to struggle, especially in Philadelphia. It's one of 2 major league ballparks he has yet to hit a home run in. Shohei Ohtani does. So fans in Philadelphia have never seen a Shohei Ohtani home run. It's a unicorn that we may never see.
Bummer.
Yeah, it's a real bummer. But I mean, I think, they match up well with this team. They are not intimidated by the Dodgers. And I think there's going to be a number of teams this year that when they see the Dodgers roll into town and they see all the Japanese superstars and they see Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and they see all the postseason heroes like Kike Hernandez and Tommy Edman and all these different guys, there's an intimidation factor. If you're not sure about how good you are, you can go into that series thinking to yourself, man, we've really got to play perfect baseball to beat this team. And I think one of the things the Dodgers showed you is they have weaknesses too. They're not perfect. They made some boneheaded blunders. You mentioned JT Realmuto with those 2 caught stealings in the game on Monday. Well, Shohei Ohtani trying to steal second with Mookie Betts, the tying run at the plate in the 8th inning and you're down 3-0 was moronic. It was a really stupid time to try to steal a base. And then, of course, JT gunned out. Was it Chris Turner? Who was it in the 9th? I forget. Chris Taylor, was it Chris? I don't remember now.
Taylor, yeah.
Taylor.
Mm-hmm. It was Chris Taylor.
Yeah. So, but I mean, we saw with, in these last 2 games of the series, Roki Sasaki has great stuff, but he's still trying to figure it out here at the major league level. He only went 4 innings in the game on Saturday. Pitched well enough, but the Phillies kind of had him on the ropes a little bit in that game a couple of different times. Really should have broken through in one of those innings. And then, of course, Tyler Glasnow in this game. And there's always the worry, especially with Glasnow. There was a weird moment in that meltdown inning where they called time as he was getting ready to pitch, and the trainers were coming out to talk to him. There was concern, like, did he get hurt again? Is it, what's going on there? He obviously didn't get hurt. He stayed in and pitched to a couple more batters before he was pulled for ineffectiveness. But the Dodgers don't have, as I watched the lineup, really good hitters in there. But again, it is a lineup I think you can deal with. It's not the 1997 Cleveland Indians, with Lofton and Bell and Baer, like where you just 1 through 9, like where are the easy outs? I would argue maybe the Phillies lineup is slightly stronger, maybe not. I don't know. But it's a horse race between these 2 teams. And I think that's my big takeaway is like, if these 2 teams get into a playoff matchup, it's even money for me who comes out on top at the end of that series. It's coming down to a bounce here, a little luck here, a call there, but to see who wins those games, because I think we saw this Phillies team they just match up well against the Dodgers.
And that was another one of my points as well, was that the Dodgers have weak spots to pick away at. I honestly don't think you can look at these 2 teams and say, oh yeah, one is definitely better than the other. Right. Going into a series. I think you're exactly right. This series, every game was determined by 2 or fewer runs.
Right.
I mean, like that alone. And that you had different versions of that throughout. Whereas in the first game, it was all about suppression. Mm-hmm. It was all about pitching and defense, and JT Realmuto bleeding and taping his nail back on or whatever. Like it was all about keeping the Dodgers at bay. And game 2 was about the Phillies not coming through when they had opportunities against a pitcher who was gettable, but would come out of that looking less gettable because they weren't able to come through in the opportunities that they had. And then game 3 is all about this tit for tat offensive attack. The Phillies go ahead, fall behind, you have to catch back up, and then suddenly you're playing a much closer baseball game than you expected to be when Nick Castellanos hit a grand slam early on. So the Phillies kind of showed they can score more than once, and that's something that I think has plagued this team as well, especially when they've played teams that have better teams that have beaten them, which is that they score and then, they can't keep pace. They score, they have a big inning, and then they're kind of done. They've done that on a series level too, where they win the first 2 games, and the third one, kind of low energy, not really there, not super present. But again, in this series with the Dodgers, they seemed to have an answer for everything that the Dodgers offered. And I think you're right. I think you really saw that either team is really capable of winning a game when these 2 teams are playing each other, and they're both really, really good. It will come down to the things like the Dodgers having base running mistakes, or the Phillies like failing to come through with runners on base. It will come down to stuff like that. I said that going in. When you have an inning like how Alvarado had against the Rockies, the Dodgers are going to be a lot less forgiving about something like that. And as we saw with Jordan Romano today.
Yeah, but then Jose Alvarado comes down and mows him down. So, I mean, that's just – and the Dodgers had a couple of bullpen issues in this series as well. Blake Trinan, the Phillies got to him a couple of different times. He's one of –
Kirby Yates.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of their most important relievers in the back within those high-leverage spots. And the Phillies got to him in the same way the Dodgers got to Romano. So, I mean, it's like, again, there are weaknesses. These teams kind of have some similar weaknesses. But, the large takeaway is these might be the 2 best teams in baseball. I know the National League West right now, you've got a Giants team that's won 7 in a row. The Padres look amazing. The Dodgers look amazing. I mean, there's a lot of great teams, and the Diamondbacks are off to a little bit of a slower start. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Nationals this weekend, but I still think they're a phenomenally good baseball team. But right now, I don't know that you could say that the Phillies and Dodgers aren't the 2 best teams in baseball at this moment. And again, April 6th, the evening of April 6th, as we are recording this, 3 series into the season. I came into this series just like I was hyping it up in my own mind too, because this is an early season series but it could be a playoff preview. I mean, it should be a playoff preview. Could be an NLCS preview. So after winning 2 out of 3, do you feel like this series had any more importance, or is it too early in the season to say like this series had special significance, the Phillies winning 2 out of 3? My guess is if they'd lost 2 out of 3, we'd be poo-pooing the special significance, but they didn't. They won 2 out of 3, so I'm curious.
Well, I think that's your answer. That it basically comes down to, if you win a series like this, yeah, it can make you feel like it means something. And if you lose a series, you just dismiss it because, yeah, at the end of the day, this is just another series at the beginning of the season. You got it. You're trying to win as much as you can. You don't want to wind up in too dramatic a hole like the Braves have. But winning the series, I mean, even if it is just more of a mental boost, it's going to be more valuable to you. I mean, yeah, like I said, they said, oh, we would still consider ourselves a good team, win or lose this game, because you have to, because if it's really the difference, like if one game is the difference between, hey, we've won all of our series so far and we've played 3 series, again, you're talking about such a minuscule amount, it's not going to impact things down the line. But this isn't just like a game. This was, like as it was framed, an NLCS preview, but it's the Phillies and Dodgers. And as Phillies watchers, fans, evaluators, we want to see them play this team. It's almost jarring that they played them this early in the season. Yeah. You want to see how you match up. And, the X factors are the X factors. Like you said, Freeman's not in the lineup. Nola doesn't have the run support he needs again in game 2, but he also gets himself in trouble. These things happen. But end of the day, the Phillies took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. Took 2 out of 3 from the defending champs, the team that came in undefeated. Again, no one expects the Dodgers to go 162-0, right. But until they get beat, you don't know that. There's a chance, know? And the Phillies were that team, got to be that team that put a stop to that rampage. And, that is a statement. You're going to downplay it if you're anybody else, but everybody knows, like, yeah, that's a statement. The Phillies proved they can hang with the Dodgers, and they should hang with the Dodgers, and they should be up on that tier with the Dodgers.
And maybe puts it inside the Dodgers' head. Can we beat this team? Like this, they kind of have our number. Mm-hmm. Like, this is, anytime you can maybe knock the Dodgers off balance a little bit, which I think, given the success the Phillies have had against them the last couple of years, we talked about this last week, I think, on the podcast, the Phillies coming into this series, maybe with a little chip on their shoulder, thinking, everybody's already crowning the Dodgers, but, we beat them pretty good last year. We match up really well with these guys. That was confirmed this weekend. And again, you're right. Even if they'd lost on Sunday, they kind of went toe-to-toe with this team. All three games. The first two games were really tight matchups, pitchers, duels, not a lot of offense. And then you had a little bit of a slugfest here. And that's the other thing about this Phillies team so far this year. In the game on Sunday, they go up 6-2, but then Jordan Romano comes in. And I want to talk about the wisdom of bringing him in that spot as well by Rob Thompson in just a second. But to go down all of a sudden 7-6 after, you're down 2-0, you have that big inning, you're up 4 runs, but the Dodgers start to chip away, they start to chip away, and then all of a sudden you're losing 7-6 late in the game. They've gotten to one of your supposed best relief pitchers. Do you get up off the mat? We've seen the Phillies do that this year. The Phillies have had a number of late game comebacks, a number of times where the games have been really, really close on a razor's edge, and they do damage against another team's bullpen. Some of the bullpen pieces, like against the Nationals and the Rockies, not so good. The Dodgers have a good bullpen. This is a team that has one of the better sets of relievers in baseball. And so you're starting to develop a personality of never being out of a game so far here in 2025. So there's that part of it too. And that's the thing about this series is that, these games were really tight. They could have gone either way. And that's shows you how close these two teams are at this point here, very, very early in the season. I did want to talk a little bit about, let's get into these games a little bit individually as well. Of course, we've already talked about the Castellanos Grand Slam. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention Bryson Stott and Edmundo Sosa with huge RBIs in that bottom of the 7th inning after the Dodgers took a 7-6 lead to make it 8-7. Again, you Phillies drew 11 walks, phenomenal plate disciplines in this game. Brandon Marsh makes an insane sliding catch that temporarily saved a run. In that 7th inning, it would have been nice if they could have made that stand up, but unfortunately they couldn't. I do think we need to talk a little bit more about Jordan Romano. 3rd bad outing in 5 so far this season. His velocity is down. His ERA now 15.75. And I think bringing him in this spot, I think was Rob Thompson's first big mistake of the season. He's going to make more. That's what a manager does. Managers make great calls. They make mistakes too. And I say that because, yes, you do have Romano kind of penciled in as this pitcher, and it's early in the season. You want to give him those opportunities. But as soon as the first guy got on, Kerkering's warming up in the bullpen. If you're going to have Kerkering up that quickly, why not have him start the inning when you're looking at Ohtani and you're looking at Betts, you're looking at Muncy or whoever else was in at that point? Like you're looking at the top of the Dodgers lineup there, bringing in a reliever who's struggling with his velocity, who's struggling with his command against the top of the lineup in that spot, even though it was the 7th inning rather than say the 9th inning or the 8th inning or whatever. A questionable decision on Rob Thompson's part in that spot. And of course, Romano made it look that way by just with the low velo, not being able to command anything, getting knocked around again. I'll ask you first about the decision by Rob Thompson, and then we'll get to Romano specifically. What was your thought on Rob Thompson's decision to bring him in there?
Well, I really don't want to spend another spring waiting for a guy who was supposed to be better, or something's not working. Oh, the velocity's down, to figure it out, and the Phillies are gonna weigh out exactly when to start putting this guy in. And okay, we're gonna start putting him in some lower leverage situations, and then not too many of them come up, and then he gets into one and he does okay, and it winds up being okay. Well, that was the series of low leverage situations we were going to put him in. He's actually going to be back into high leverage situations now, where situations change, guys get hurt, and that guy just winds up being the front and center guy who's just coming in all the time. Manager gets asked, why do you keep putting that guy in? He's struggling. He's like, well, the only way he's going to stop struggling is if we give him the opportunity to get better and improve. And I believe in Jordan Romano and blah, blah, blah. I just don't want to sit through another spring of doing this. And I can see it happening. Yeah. The velocity's not there. That's essentially an off switch for Jordan Romano's effectiveness. There's just bringing him in is essentially asking to get hit around or putting more pressure on your defense at the very least to come through with plays like we saw Brandon Marsh make, where you're like, boy, are we really going to get 3 of those before this inning is over? No, the answer is absolutely not most of the time. And Romano's unfortunately become that pitcher because the velocity is just not there. He's not able to blow pitch. He's not able to blow hitters away. He's not able to get miss bats and actually get them to not have the ball right in their hot zone, right where they're able to hit it. And that makes him, a pretty stressful pitcher to bring in late inning situations where the game is close. So It's not that I expect Thompson to stop bringing in Romano. I mean, and in 3 out of 5 starts being bad isn't great, but again, it's a very low number of appearances for Romano, and you're gonna see more of him. You're just going to, because the Phillies got him to be a central piece of the bullpen and to play an important role, and they're not going to give up on that immediately. But boy, bringing him in that point, the Phillies' most struggling reliever was not the spot to bring Jordan Romano back and help him, on this road. And now he's kind of had these 3 bad appearances, and now it's solidified in fans' heads. They don't want to see him.
Yeah, that's the thing.
He was getting booed when he left the field today, and now he has entered that space where he is not somebody anybody trusts, including me. And now when you're bringing him in all spring with the effort to get him back on track, it's going to be bad news for everybody for a little while. It's going to take a lot more to get that trust back. So yeah, that was not the spot for him, unfortunately.
And after the game, Romano said he's not hurt. There's no injury. Now they say that. Who knows if that's the truth or not? But he says there's no injury. That he's not sore. He's not hurting. He pitched much better in spring training, but I don't know that I don't remember where the velocity was in spring training and whether he's got kind of a dead arm. Matt Strom is dealing with the dead arm and lower velocity, but he's kind of powering through it. He's kind of managing to get through some of those rough spots, and he pitched the 8th inning against the Dodgers here on Sunday and got through it just fine. So, sometimes a pitcher can deal with a little bit of that, and as long as you've got your command, you can get around having diminished velocity to a degree. But Romano has not only been able to throw the ball hard, he hasn't been able to locate it. I mean, anything over the plate is right down the middle, and everything else is well off the plate. I mean, you're making decisions very easy for the hitters when that's your recipe right now. So I really do think you're gonna see him in less high leverage situations, lower leverage situations, but that drastically and radically changes the nature of this bullpen. You are already one upper tier arm shy of what you had last year with Hoffman and Carlos Estevez gone. Hoffman, by the way, doing fine in Toronto, just in case anybody was wondering how good old Jeffy's doing. The Phillies didn't want to go there. They made this swap out, and there's kind of a lot riding on it. He was going to be one of the late inning guys, 8th or 9th inning guys. And so he doesn't know why his velocity is down. Romano says he thinks it's something mechanical. He's going to go back and look at the tape. But man, I don't know of any mechanical adjustment that costs you 3 miles an hour on your fastball. Maybe I don't know as much about pitching as I would like to think I do, but I've seen a lot, and I don't really feel like there's a mechanical switch you can flip that's all of a sudden going to get you an extra 2-3 miles an hour on your fastball. And I'll say there's a couple Phillies pitchers that are dealing with lower velocity right now, Aaron Nola being another one of them. And they're just kind of thinking, well, it'll come along, right? Early in the season, sometimes this happens. Maybe that's the case, but I think there's a fair amount to worry about with Romano and then what it does for the back of the bullpen. Jose Ruiz, we're going to need you.
I mean, like I said, they have expected a very central role from Romano. I think they want to see, they're going to give him every chance they can. But we just described this series that was like defined by which team is going to make the most mistakes. And, he's just that guy right now. He unfortunately coming into this game early in the season. Yeah. But his track record was just not the guy who's going to weave around a Dodgers threat and help maintain a 1-run lead. Like he's just not going to be that guy right now. He's not proven that level of trust. If he had come through today, okay, sure, let's talk. But unfortunately, yeah, it has become, okay, we got to get this guy back on track because there's a big difference between 93 and 97 miles an hour. And, if you're not hitting that, then you're not going to be very helpful to the team in that situation.
Let's talk about Ed Sosa, who is, I think, quickly becoming a legend. Certainly a fan favorite here in Philadelphia because he just seems to make an impression every time he plays. He plays well pretty much every time he's out there. And I know last year when he got super hot for Trey Turner, there was a lot of thought, like, how do we make him an everyday player? I think we see if Edmundo Sosa plays every day, every game, all season long, eventually, that runs its course pretty quickly. But in these spurts, when he gets hot like this, the Phillies really would be wise to ride him as much as they can. In this game on Sunday, Sosa was playing for Alec Boehm, who had a miserable game on Saturday. Looked kind of like end of last season Alec Boehm. Made 4 outs on 5 pitches in the game on Saturday, and he's real off to a very slow start this year. Edmundo Sosa went 2 for 4 with an RBI. Of course, the go-ahead ground out that was close to a grounded out double play, just barely beat that ball out to first, but he beat it out. And the go-ahead run scored in that inning. Now with a .550 batting average and a 1321 OPS on the young season for Ed Sosa. Maybe this is just my lack of excitement for anything Alec Boehm related at this point, but I would not mind seeing Sosa in the lineup every day at third base until he cools down. I just wouldn't. I'm tired of the Alec Boehm show where he's doing what he did on Saturday. And again, I'm not looking necessarily to bail on Alec Boehm, but Edmundo Sosa right now gives this team more juice and a better chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue. You got to go back to what do the Phillies think about Alec Boehm? Like, what are and coming into this season, it was like, everything's rock solid, everything's good. Boehm's got his head on straight after a wacky winter of rumors and everything, but it's fine. He's fine. And then you see a game like that, it's like, I don't mind seeing him go like 0 for 4 or something some nights. As long as he's not in the middle of a slump or a prolonged struggling period or whatever, then sure, whatever. But it's that approach stuff. It's that like, okay, so now we're mad and now we're trying to like dig our way out of a hole, and we all know how that goes. So like, this is obviously need maybe take a step back. And the added factor to that is that, you have a player like Edmundo Sosa, who is typically hot this time of year before he tapers off, and then gets hot at some point in the second half and then tapers off. I mean, that's the general pattern that Edmundo Sosa's past 2 seasons have played out under. And you want to take advantage of that because he's one of these guys that's not just like, oh, he's hitting.
Right.
It's that he's very hot.
Right.
He is like your best hitter when he's in that zone. And, he had that great game, and then Rob Thompson sat him the next day, and there were already questions of like, why are you sitting this guy? And the answer is because he's not, one of your starters. So if you're not like creating a dramatic change in your batting order, then you can't play him every day. And I can see that being Thompson's approach, where he's like, I'm not going to be the guy to rattle Alec Boehm, but also Alec Boehm is swinging, making 5 outs or 4 outs on 5 pitches. So clearly he's kind of rattled already. So why not put this guy who's really on one out there and squeeze as much offense out of his bat as you can? Yeah. I get that makes sense, but like, again, with what approach are we treating Alec Boehm at this point, Phillies? Like, are we treating him like a baseball player in the major leagues, or are we treating him like, a kid where we got to be like, okay, hey, calm down.
Enough with the kid stuff. I mean, seriously, and enough is enough with that. And I'm not out on Alec Boehm. As a matter of fact, I guarantee he'll play on Tuesday. They'll probably play Sosa in either left or center in place of Marsh or Kepler against Chris Sale against the Braves. But Rob Thompson did say after the game they need to get into the lab and figure out different ways to keep Edmundo Sosa in the lineup, and he's made himself versatile enough that you can play him in the outfield or in the infield at this point. You play him at short, play him at third, play him at left, play him at center.
He survived the center field experiment and didn't look lost out there. That first ball that found him was over his head. I mean, I saw I guess it was the Mariners center fielder not handle a fly ball very well. Yeah, that was very similar to that one. So yeah, I mean, I feel like making him more versatile is great. That does not always work for the Phillies, but I think it can with Sosa. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to make as much use of this early Edmundo Sosa hot streak as you possibly can.
Couple other quick notes from the Sunday game. Chris Sanchez, kind of a weird game, was really effective outside of Teoscar Hernandez. Gave up 2 home runs to Hernandez, but was really effective against Ohtani and Betts and everybody else. He looked good. It just was kind of he had one guy that was really giving him a lot of trouble in that lineup on Sunday, but otherwise a decent start from Christopher Sanchez. The numbers won't look like it. And then I got to just give a little shout out to Rafael Marchand playing for JT Realmuto and drawing those 3 walks against the Dodgers team. I mean, that's just really nice to see from a young player who doesn't have a lot of major league experience. He doesn't get to start very often. You would not be at all surprised if he was in there hacking. And Marchand just, hitting number 9 in the lineup, willing to take his free base and score his runs and get in front of the big guys and be a part of things. And I want to make sure that we talk about this team needing to grind out at bats more, walk more, be more patient. Marchand did a great job of that at the bottom of the lineup to set things up for the top. So definitely wanted to mention that too as we finish up with Sunday stuff. Any other Sunday stuff for you?
Just to piggyback on that point, last 2 years, Garrett Stubbs has never had a 3-walk game. So I'm not saying that to make Garrett Stubbs look worse. I'm just saying it because it does show early signs that position, as sad as it is to be without Stubbs, and I am sad, that may have been elevated, I think, by a lot of people's projections by Marchand being in that spot. And that's a small, quiet way that you can see some of that elevation take place. Anything else from that series? I mean, just kind of more general stuff. Aaron Nola needs run support, and Aaron Nola needs to help himself.
Well, I want to talk about Saturday. We're going to talk about the Saturday game now, and then we'll talk about the Friday game. Let's talk about the Saturday game. Phillies lose 3-1. Aaron Nola gives up 2 home runs, 3 earned runs in 6 innings. Of course, again, concern about his lower velocity, a 6.35 ERA in his first 2 starts so far this year. But this one was really more on the Phillies offense than Aaron Nola, in my opinion. The Phillies offense had 4 hits on the day. Schwarber hit into a bad luck line out double play in the bottom of the 5th. Stott made first and third with 1 out. The Phillies are down 2-1 at the time. And Schwarber ropes a line drive to right field that looked like it was going to fall for a hit or even be extra bases, but it hung up just a little bit too long. Teoscar Hernandez had a great series in this 3-game series for the Dodgers. He fired a strike in the air on the fly to first base to double off Bryson Stott. As everyone knows, Stott was stealing on the play, so just a real bad luck situation there for the Phillies in that inning. The Phillies got their first look at Roki Sasaki. He went just 4 innings, threw 68 pitches through 4 innings. It's kind of an interesting. I didn't realize that they were on such a pitch count with him at this point. I didn't realize Sasaki was going to be kind of limited. And I don't know what the plan is for him there, but if, his big offseason acquisition, they didn't do that with Yamamoto last year. I know Sasaki is younger than Yamamoto was, but an interesting decision to pull him after just 4 innings and his third start of the season, and all 3 of them have been a little bit on the rocky side. But Aaron Nola was the main topic of conversation because, again, the 2 more home runs in this game. It is so frustrating to watch him give up homer after homer after homer. I think I saw 45% of the earned runs he's given up over the last 2 years have been via the home run, or maybe it's even longer than that. Like that's how they score off him. He rarely gives up a big inning with doubles and singles. It's always a big home run. And I think I was looking at the start yesterday and I was like, it wasn't a bad start. He went 6 innings and gave up 3 earned runs. I mean, you'll take that every outing from Aaron Nola, right? And then you realize that's a 4.50 ERA. Like if Aaron Nola finishes the season with a 4.50 ERA, I don't think we're thinking he had a really good season, even if every single one of his starts was 6 innings and 3 earned runs allowed. So where do you come down on an Aaron Nola start like that? Because I'm not talking about Aaron Nola as a whole. 3 runs in 6 innings to me feels pretty good. Like if your pitcher gives you that, even if he is your number 2 or your number 3, the offense should score more than that to help get you across the finish line.
This is Aaron Nola. He is ace-like. He throws a knuckle curve that's devastating. His defect is that he gives up a ton of home runs. Problem with that is that when that's your defect, that's just like a pretty big problem. Defect, yeah. Honestly. Like, okay, well, he doesn't allow a ton of hits. He just allows the hit you don't want him to allow. The hit that kind of like throws a hole, that changes the direction of the game.
Changes the
like
nature of the
that
game.
really just pivots. Mm-hmm. The game pivots on Aaron Nola's biggest mistake, unfortunately. And maybe this is another reason as we piece together the what is Aaron Nola question over the last few years and into the future as his contract extension dictates. This was, I think, another factor in it is that this pitcher who can pitch so well and so steadily and so dominantly, but, and we've defined it in the past as, well, he unravels quickly. He gets into a little bit of trouble. That means he's going to get into a lot of trouble. Well, that can also be isolated because the trouble he can get into can be one bad pitch and then it goes over the fence. And with that being the problem, you can get underwater pretty quick. You can get the game out of reach from your offense pretty quick, even if they are hitting. And so that being Aaron Nola, I mean, that's again part of the Aaron Nola conundrum is that, you know, the one level he's like, yeah, I'm going along, I'm doing well, I'm keeping guys off the base paths, limiting my pitches per inning, and then oops, ball slipped out of my hand, and Teoscar Hernandez like parks it over the fence, and well, now it's 3-0. You know, that's a whole other ball game. That's a heck of a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, that's not like, oh, I loaded the bases, but I got out of it, or like, oh yeah, I was making a mistake. I made an adjustment and I stopped giving up base hits, whatever. It's just a lot more explosive and damaging when his problem is giving up home runs, which it clearly is, and it was in game 2. Now, you're right. This was an example of a game where the offense could have and should have bailed him out. Six innings pitched with 3 earned runs is not the best start in the world, but it's a start Aaron Nola should be able to make and still have a pretty solid chance of getting a win, even if he does give up 2 home runs. So, you know, this is an example of, I think, both of the things I said, that he needs run support, but he's got to stop beating himself. Yeah. He needs run support, and he's got to stop needing run support so badly.
Right. And part of the issue too, again, he's not able to throw anything by anyone. And I remember him having this problem. Maybe it was 2 years ago. We're looking at the odd year thing again. You know, he struggled for a good part of the season being able to elevate his fastball and throw it by people. That wasn't the case last year. His fastball had more velocity on it a year ago, although it's been down. His fastball velocity has been steadily creeping down a little bit by each of the last 4 or 5 years. The average fastball velocity has been trending downward for Aaron Nola, which again, not surprising given that he's getting older and he's got a lot of other pitches in his arsenal that he should be able to deal with some kind of diminished velocity. But when you do have diminished velocity, and that 2-seam fastball creaks out over the middle of the plate, hitters are not going to miss it. He's not going to get the benefit of hitters missing his mistake pitches. I don't think he ever really has. But hitters do not miss his mistake pitches ever. He pays for every single mistake pitch that he makes. And there's not a lot of them during the course of a game, but there's so little wiggle room for Aaron Nola that he will get burned if he's not 100% precise. And that's a really tough line to walk. You're on that tightrope from your first pitch to pitch number 95 if you're able to get that far. So if his velocity does pick up, then you can elevate your fastball and throw it by some guys as the season goes along, and that will help him. Again, it's another instance where there's a velocity issue from a Phillies pitcher. Caleb Cotham does wonderful things with velocity with certain pitchers. Chris Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, who we're going to talk about in a second, chief among them. But he's got a couple of guys who are dealing with some velocity shortfalls right now, and so far they have not been able to get away with it.
Yeah, and I mean, Aaron Nola doesn't need many more starts like that for the Aaron Nola critiques to come down. Right. I mean, he doesn't need any more. Right. Like that's essentially what people are preparing for. And that, you know, that first start, Josh Bell had to hit a home run off him in the 4th inning, was just like, yep, okay, so more of this. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, the first Aaron Nola dominant start of the year is coming. It'll be, you know, within the next start or two. And that'll be a nice refresher of what Aaron Nola can also do, and that also why you build a rotation as deep as the Phillies have, so that Aaron Nola can struggle while Jesus Luzardo comes in and just makes this team 10 times better.
I think Nola's going to have a good start against the Cardinals in St. Louis later on in the week. I really do. And then let's talk about Friday's game. There's not a whole lot to talk about. We talked about the JT Realmuto heroics late in the game, behind the dish defensively. But the story of the game is obviously Jesus Luzardo, who was brilliant once again, looking like a true top-of-the-rotation starter. You know, I know the Red Sox just signed Garrett Crochet to a contract extension. My bold prediction is that Jesus Luzardo gets a contract extension before Kyle Schwarber or JT Realmuto does. I would not be at all surprised to see the Phillies try to lock him up right now to a multi-year contract extension that goes beyond. They have him for this year and next year, but this is kind of the time you want to do that. You know, you get out in front of it like they kind of did with Christopher Sanchez and they've done with other people in the past. I would not be at all surprised if those conversations are happening. I think they should happen. Lock him up because he is throwing harder than he ever has. 7 innings, against one of the best lineups in baseball. Again, without Freddie Freeman, but even against Freeman, lefty on lefty, I'm not sure Freeman would have had much of a chance against him. Shohei Ohtani sure didn't. 2 hits allowed in 7 innings, 8 strikeouts and 2 walks. Justin, the trade looking brilliant, as we all like the trade in the offseason, but looking like a true difference maker for this team, especially because Aaron Nola has been struggling a little bit. Ranger Suarez not in the rotation right now either.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say, is that you're already missing Suarez. You're having some hiccups with Nola, and yet the Phillies are still out here winning every series they play and beating, the undefeated team and the defending champs coming in. Why? Because they're getting really strong starting pitching performances. And Luzardo coming in and being able to fill one of those spots with another guy who can go 7 innings of shutout ball. I mean, it's obviously huge. Like, I feel like you said, the outlook of this trade has not really shifted. When it happened, it was looked upon, once people kind of got a little more familiar with who he was, this was very much looked at as a positive, and I think he's coming through exactly how the Phillies imagined him coming through. I mean, there's like little more to say than, yeah, he did exactly what you wanted him to do out there. He gave him a chance to win, and they did. Yeah. Like they scored enough to win. He held one of the best, if not the best, lineups at bay for 7 innings, gave it over to the bullpen. Guess who almost blew it? But for the most part, this was a very effective pitching outing for the Phillies, starting with their big acquisition, which, again, goes back to how they addressed the offseason and, like, how we pictured them addressing the offseason, and just this idea that, like, look, what we're willing to do and what we're willing to spend, we see a move we can make that can strengthen what is already considered the biggest strength of this team, which has already made this team one of the best. In baseball. We're going to make it even better. And you're looking back at that, there's some wisdom to that, where everybody's looking over here at Soto and saying, like, well, you got to get Soto, and like, this is going to help your team so much. And obviously Juan Soto's a one of a kind player, but the Phillies looked at it a little differently because they felt like they weren't really in the running there and said, let's make our rotation better. And Luzardo definitely does. He's already doing that. He's matching, all the numbers you want to see. So, like, yeah, that was exactly what you want to see, and I think you can get used to seeing it.
And also, again, we talked about they would have had to spend a lot more in trade capital to get Garrett Crochet. You didn't have to give up as much. Starlin Caba, again, very nice prospect, but didn't have to give up nearly the prospect cost that you would have to get Jesus Luzardo that you did Garrett Crochet. And again, I would be talking to the Jesus Luzardo camp right now about a contract extension, keeping him in Philadelphia for longer than just this year, next year, striking while that iron's hot. And frankly, it would be smart for Luzardo to do that, because you never know when the injury man comes and taps on your shoulder, and ride this hot streak here at the beginning and get that cash money. Because it seems like it's a good opportunity for both sides to get something done. And I did just want to talk about Shohei Ohtani for just a second, Justin. Again, 1 for 11, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks. I know. Everybody talks about Shohei Ohtani as some great player. What are they looking at, Justin? I saw a guy today couldn't hit water if he's hitting on sand. Come on. What is we getting all worked up about Shohei Ohtani for? In Philadelphia, hey, he's, looks just like Travis Lee, if you ask me.
Getting thrown out at second base, looking around like he's lost. Doesn't even instinctively point and try to get them to review it.
Numbskull.
Just like, who is this guy? Yeah. I mean, what a bummer, I guess, for fans who don't get to see this guy hit a home run at Citizens Bank Park ever. But for the most part, why is everyone, this is part of the Dodgers persona, where they just come to town and they've got that lineup. They've got the best player in the world, and he chose them, and he's doing little home run celebrations that mimic his commercials. And oh gosh, isn't it just like the most fun to see them do those things together? They're like a fun team. They're like the best, but they're also fun, and they're all friends with each other. Sure. And it's just so nice to see. And oh, look at that, they lost 2 of 3 to the Phillies. Well, that's not necessarily the narrative that any of these that Apple TV broadcasts came in with. Everybody's kind of ready to see the Dodgers run the board, and look, I get that. Everybody likes a good main character for the baseball season, and Shohei Ohtani will most certainly be that. But it's nice to see that he can come to town and not always have things go his way, because life isn't the New Balance commercial that comes on every time MLB TV goes to commercial.
That thing is incessant. I hear that music start to play and I get hives immediately. They start popping up.
You're not always the star. Shohei Ohtani. Life's not a New Balance commercial.
No.
And now that you've been to Philadelphia, you know
In
that.
Philadelphia, more like no balance.
Got him.
All right.
If Shohei Ohtani's representatives are listening,
right.
we mean every word.
Let's talk about this upcoming series against the Atlanta Braves. Justin, they're red hot. They've won 1 out of their last 2. So, they are
red hot, getting rained out today. It's super
rained out on
hot
Sunday.
for the Braves.
The ship's pointed in the right direction. It could be one of those, are we sure that they didn't set off the sprinklers to kind of give them an off day? We sure that didn't happen? Crash Davis out there?
No, we are not.
Okay, no,
we are not sure about that. But I mean, they are learning that the best way to win is to not have to play the game at all.
Right. The best way not to lose we're playing not to lose here. That's really what's going on. The Phillies have an off day on Monday, and then they will take on the Braves for a 3-game series down in Atlanta. The Braves, of course, as most of you know, have started the season 1-8. They are 6 games behind the Phillies in the National League East standings as of right now. An interesting.
I really liked that their big feel-good win, where they took out all their frustrations on the Marlins, was followed immediately by a shutout loss the following day, proving that yes, this was an anomaly, and you should not get excited.
I have been a part of Philly seasons where that exact scenario has happened. Like, you start off awful, and then he's like, we finally broke through our first win, 10-0, whatever it is. We are back. Okay, this is going to be what gets us on the right track. And then you're like, nothing the next day, like 4-0, 3
It's like
hits.
a big walk-off win the night before, and then suddenly they're just getting shelled 6-0 in the second inning the next day. You're like,
there's no continuity whatsoever. One day has nothing to do with the next day. Against a Marlins team that's playing a little bit better to start the season here. They're not good, but
I mean, no one's making the Marlins a part of this story. No. This is a Braves story.
This is a Braves story. And the Phillies will look to keep that Braves story churning here this week in Atlanta. You would be a little bit concerned, like, hey, a little letdown after the Dodgers series? Not when you're going into Atlanta to take on the Braves. A great pitching matchup on Tuesday. Zach Wheeler, who owns the Atlanta Braves, going up against Chris Sale, who owned the Phillies last year. Wednesday, Taijuan Walker versus Grant Holmes. Okay, we'll see if Taijuan has a second act in him. I heard you and Liz talking about it on the previous podcast. It's certainly a feel-good outing for him last time around. We'll see if he can keep it going against Grant Holmes of the Atlanta Braves. And then on Thursday, Jesus Luzardo against Spencer Schwellenbach, another great matchup. Schwellenbach owned the Phillies a season ago. They could not figure him out, and he's one of the best young up-and-coming right-handed pitchers in the National League this week. So, Justin, going into Atlanta against a Braves team that is struggling mightily at this point, are they a snake in the weeds? Is this a series where the Braves start to put it together? Is it a series that you're worried about right now? Normally there'd be cause for, trepidation going into Atlanta to take on a Braves team that most people thought, a lot of people thought, some people as a part of this podcast thought was going to win the division. And yet sitting here 1-8, licking their wounds and looking at this Phillies team coming in off a 3 straight series win, including one against the defending world champs.
I may be the fastest person to go from picking a team to winning the division to asking, should we eliminate the Braves from the postseason?
Just entirely.
Maybe about 1 week, which, to my credit, we all saw the stat getting passed around. An 0-7 team has never made the Major League Baseball playoffs. Just something to think about. Yeah. The Braves are now one of those 0-7 teams, and I said it before, but I'll say it again. They will now have to do something that has never been done in order to make the postseason.
Now, I will say this. For most of baseball history, those 0-7 teams, most of them you had to win your division for a lot of those years, or you only had the one wild card. It's only been since 2022 we've had all these extra playoff teams that had the opportunity. But that being said, only 2.
I don't see how that changes the objective truth of my statement.
No, it's true.
I don't think I needed an asterisk there pointing out that,
If you'd let me finish, I will continue to bolster your point. And that is that only 2 of those 0-7 teams ever even finished with a winning record after starting 0-7. One of those teams just finished 1 game over 500, and the other one finished 8 games. I think they won 85 games after starting 0-7. So your point remains, even if, all of those different teams, had all those different playoff spots, 2-3 wild cards, none of them still would have made the playoffs. Anyway.
I think even if the Braves were playing well and like we're even playing at the same level as the Phillies and Dodgers have been, I don't think after this Dodgers series I'd be feeling particularly worried about playing the Atlanta Braves. I mean, when are you worried about facing a team? When your team's dragging a bit and that team's looking a little hot. That's just not the case here. And I like that the Phillies aren't like, being characterized as like this red hot steamroller. They're just a team that's coming out, winning series. They're looking human at times, but they're just, they're getting the job done where they need to, and they're beating good teams because they're a good team, and that's great. That's where I love the Phillies to be. And right now I think they're in that spot, and they're going to go into Atlanta, and I think they're going to be able to take advantage of a team that's really, really, really struggling to find its footing. We all know that the Braves are missing a ton of guys, missing the two big important guys that haven't rejoined the team yet. Now they're missing Reynaldo Lopez. They're missing Jurickson Profar with a PED suspension now. Yep. And half the lineup's hitting under 200. Right. They're going to get Sean Murphy back, I think, relatively soon. But like that catching position's been absolutely worthless for them with Drake Baldwin and Chadwick Tromp in there. I mean, that is just, and going from the Murphy-Darno combo is quite the drop-off for this team. So it's not just bad luck. It's not just guys are missing. This team has big offensive contributors on it who really aren't just getting the job done, or guys that were hitting well and playing well last year, and they're just not now. Right. Jared Kelenich's not giving the Braves anything in right field. No. Marcell Ozuna is leading the league in walks, but other than that, he also is nothing. There's nothing there, man. Austin Riley has been a complete non-factor. Wow. So this is a great time to play the Atlanta Braves, honestly. This is the best time to be able to play the Atlanta Braves. And yeah, you always have a non-zero concern that you're going to be the team that helps them find their footing, but I don't know. This time I'm just not seeing that. I'm not seeing that based on what the Phillies have been able to do this season and the energy they're putting out and the ways they're coming through even when they struggle. I just see them. This does not look like the Phillies are going to be that team. When you beat the Marlins 10-0 as the Braves did, I thought like with everybody else, yeah, that's what you use the Marlins for. They're a very beatable team. You're gonna get back on track. You're gonna hammer them into the ground 10-0, and yeah, you're gonna remember what winning feels like, and off you go. I don't think the Phillies are going to show up in Atlanta to be that team against the Braves. I think they have a perfectly reasonable series win expectation going into this. There's no reason not to, based on how these Braves have been playing.
Right, and I don't think it should be terribly concerning if they lose 2 out of 3 in Atlanta this week, because the Braves do have on paper, they have a good team, but none of them are playing well right now. So yeah, the expectation should be that you're going in there and you're winning that series. That should be the expectation when a team's 1-8. I don't care if they're the Braves, the Yankees, the Dodgers, whoever it might be. You're 1-8. You stink for a reason. And there are plenty of reasons why the Braves have stunk so far. And I said this, and I interviewed Chris Willis, who is kind of like one of the head guys over at the SB Nation MLB page and used to write for the Atlanta Braves Battery Power website. And I talked to him during the offseason about what are the Braves doing? This is before they signed Jurickson Profar, but they were as quiet as the Phillies were. They were quieter. They didn't do anything to bolster the lineup. They didn't the rotation either. They lost Max Fried. So you take this big chunk of what made you good, and he's now pitching for the Yankees, and you don't really replace it. And Charlie Morton had been there for a while. Now he had been that had run its course, I think, but they have more holes than I think anybody thought they would at the start of the season. But I mean, Ken Rosenthal wrote a story last week about all the different ways the Braves don't have any depth. It's like, why wasn't anybody talking about this before the season? That's what's interesting about Atlanta. And I'm in that group too. I had the Atlanta Braves right up there with the Phillies and Mets and the Diamondbacks in that second tier after the Dodgers starting the season. I don't know what we were all looking at, and maybe they'll bounce back and be that team, but I don't know.
I think when you're making picks like that, you're often picturing the last version of the team that you actually saw with your eyes. And so that's why it was one of those, you have those years where a team goes from being a playoff team to not being a playoff team. I'm not saying I'm making that judgment about the Braves yet or that anybody should be, but during that transition, you can look around oh, we're so surprised by this because it's the Braves, even when they've been depleted talent-wise, they've found a way to win. We talked last year about how, hey, man, they still made the playoffs last year. Right. A season defined by how many injuries depleted their roster. So they have the reputation of being a deep team that wins no matter what. this is not that
No.
team. This is the most human Braves team we have seen in years. Yeah. Even with Spencer Schwellenbach having 2 starts and not allowing a single run yet, by the way.
He's good.
3 hits on a walk. That's it. In 14 innings. I mean, good Lord. Outside of that, you're getting very little to be excited about from this Braves roster right now. I mean, Bryce Elder's still in the rotation. That's a guy that, what is he doing there? That's not a serious starter. No. I mean, yeah. And so now we're just at the point where we're looking around going like, okay, why did we think this would work? But, we'll see. Yeah. There are big additions that are coming back to the Braves lineup, and so maybe we're having a different conversation about them in June or July than we are now. Yeah. But right now, they're a very beatable team, and a team that just pretty handedly stood up to an 8-0 team should definitely be able to handle a 1-8 team.
Yep, no doubt about it, and that'll get underway on Tuesday. Before we wrap up, we did get a mailbag question at our hittinseason@billypenn.com email address, and we've encouraged you all to record voice memos to send in to us if you have a question that you want to ask or a comment, or you want to just participate in the show, to record something on your phone and email it in to hittinseason@billypenn.com. And a longtime listener of the podcast, Tom Comerford, sent something in to us. He's dealing with a very specific problem, a conundrum regarding his young son, and this battle taking place in his home between being a Phillies fan or a Mets fan. All right, so Justin, so to get to the heart of Tom's point here, I think it's a race, right, between the Phillies and the Mets in order to indoctrinate his young son properly. He's still holding on as a Phillies fan, but the wife is pushing hard as a Mets fan to get him on their side. I have a little bit of an experience with this as a person, as a big Phillies fan who has a son who's a big Nationals fan. I lost the battle, and Tom, for you, I want you to win your battle. Now, it's not the end of the world. Let me just say this: it's not the end of the world. Now, the Nationals are different than the Mets. I'll just say that too. And at least I live in Washington, so it's his hometown team. I can rationalize it this way. I grew up rooting for my hometown team. He's rooting for his hometown team. I can at least understand that from a rational perspective. If that's not the case with you right now, if it's just like, this is an out-of-towner, Mets fan in Philadelphia. We didn't get that from the call, knowing, where they live and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of up in the air. I just say, Justin, it really does seem to me like this could hinge, this young child's future could hinge on which of these two teams wins the title first, the Phillies or the Mets. Those are the stakes, guys. That's what we're talking about here.
All right, Tom, here's what you got to do. You got to ask yourself, how far are you willing to go to win this battle? Are you willing to dress in blue and orange and then jump around corners and shout at your child to startle them so they equate those colors with negative experiences? Are you willing to put on a Mr. Met head and stand outside their window at night, holding a knife, not holding a knife? Totally your choice. Are you willing to smash a bunch of toys and when they come out on their birthday to see all of their new things destroyed in the living room, are you willing to tell them, Pete Alonso did this? And make sure that they know what he looks like, and they know that this man was responsible for ruining the what should have been a moment of childlike wonder that they never forget. Are you willing to take a stance like this? Because if so, you're leaving it up to baseball, and in doing so, you're leaving it up to chaos. And we've seen too many, teams that deserve to win or things that should have happened one way not happen that way. And if you want to lead your son down the path of being a Mets fan, I see no better way than to leave it up to baseball to decide that. So I feel like you gotta take some action, and you're gonna have to consider again, how far are you willing to go to save your child?
I couldn't have put it better myself. I think there's a life at stake here, a happiness, long life, vitality, at stake here.
How will you live with yourself, I think, is the important question.
And I hope, Tom, as a longtime listener of the podcast, I hope you stew on that. Just keep in mind that the Hittin Season podcast is a family-friendly podcast. So you could also play this podcast for your son as he sleeps, so that he, just through osmosis, is taking in Phillies fandom. He's understanding the team. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is your wife is not doing this with a Mets podcast. So this is an opportunity. We would like to help if we can. And if we can help in this way, we would be thrilled to do that. So please keep us updated, Tom, on how this is all going. We would like to know, where things stand as time goes along here on this very, very important life-altering situation you're experiencing in your home. All right, Justin, let's on that serious note, let's wrap things up here on this edition of the podcast. Any final thoughts for anybody?
Just a big podcast week, new Dirty Innings, new Absolutely Hammered, obviously more Hittin seasons coming. I did just want to mention I saw perhaps the least fortunate baseball play I have ever seen in my life today. When Victor Robles of the Seattle Mariners dove into the siding at Oracle Park in San Francisco and made a very, very good catch and seemed to have, I think ultimately they determined it wasn't so bad of an injury, but it looked really bad. His reaction was bad. It was like a tough oof, but he made the catch. He comes off the field after a lengthy delay. The Giants fans gave him like 5 different ovations. You're like, okay, great. This is at least being respected. Well, the Giants go ahead and I think they might have challenged twice. They might have challenged once that he caught it, which he did. And then they challenged again that he caught it, but he was out of play when he caught it. And that time the umpire said, hey, you're right. So the catch wound up getting waved off and not counting. So he hurt himself for no reason. The runner gets reassigned to second base. And wouldn't you know it, the next guy up knocks that runner in for a walk-off win for the San Francisco Giants, all while Victor Robles is in the trainer's room getting his arm checked out. Just a remarkably poor turn of events for a guy who made a catch and got hurt and then had both of those things, just reversed. Man, wow. Yeah, I had to say that because I think I watched that not long before we jumped on.
The baseball angels, sometimes they are not kind. And to poor Victor Robles, I didn't see that play. I'll have to catch that on a highlight now that we're all done. But tough one there. Well, anyway, listen, as Phillies fans, great weekend at Citizens Bank Park as the Phillies take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, and the Phillies now have a big series coming up against the Atlanta Braves this week. And so we'll be back for a midweek podcast and, of course, an end-of-the-week podcast to let you know how that series is going. In the meantime, please read all of the award-winning Justin Klugh and his fantastic work over at Baseball Prospectus, and make sure to catch the Dirty Inning and Absolutely Hammered over on the Hittin Season Patreon as well. You can also catch my stuff at thegoodphight.com as we are getting some stuff done there. And I'm doing more for the SB Nation MLB site as well. I'll have a full recap of this series up there on Monday at some point as well that you can check out too. And just want to encourage you all, again, tell your family and friends about this podcast. If you needed no further proof that this team is winning the World Series here in 2025, it was on display this weekend at Citizens Bank Park. This team is ready to do it. I'm feeling some 1980 vibes here, Justin. All those 3 years they came up short, and then in 1980, that maybe seemingly their last chance to do it, they did it. Same thing's happening here in 2025. So, family.
I guess that would make Max Kepler Pete Rose.
That would make Max Kepler Pete Rose.
Oh, I was going to mention, by the way, Max Kepler, big old ofer for the series against the Dodgers. You may have noticed from the lack of sarcastic emojis sent by me to you over the series.
I did. My blue sky was
Max Kepler, not the best series for old Max Pete Rose Kepler.
My blue sky was much quieter this weekend than it has been through the first couple series of the season, but we'll see if Max can get back on it. He might not even play on Tuesday against Chris Sale. We'll see what happens. But that's going to do it, everybody, for this edition of Hittin Season. Again, tell your friends, family members to subscribe to the podcast. Leave a 5-star rating if and when you can. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Hittin Season.